Welcome to Virtual Vegfest Live. I kind of started that a little early because I wanted to make sure my green screen was there. It's black, which is pretty awesome. That's why I'm a little bit surprised. So, hey, it's Helene, and we are on the road, which is why my background is different. We are in Asheville, North Carolina. We just got here today from Greenville, South Carolina. We are visiting all the cities that we are going to be doing in person events in this year, possibly Chattanooga. We haven't decided on that yet. So, we're going to talk about the Kangaroo film today, and we have the creators of the film with us, which is Kate and Mick, and they're in Australia, and it's 8 o'clock in the morning there, and it's Monday. But let's talk about how you can win some prizes, and first let's thank Orgain for sponsoring Virtual VegFest Live this month, and you can win a prize pack from Orgain, Follow Your Heart, Hodo Foods, Crofters Organics, Shroom Meats, and Cinnaholic. How do you do that? Go to virtualvegfest.com and click the little contest button, and you can do things like subscribe to our Virtual VegFest YouTube and like our sponsors' pages, and you get points, and that's entries into winning those prize packs. And at the end of the month, we pick 6 winners, and they send you the prizes if you're one of the winners. The winners have been picked for, what month are we in? June. The winners have been picked for May, and that's what you have to do. So I don't know if I have anything else to say right now. I'm just excited to be talking to people in Australia where it's also winter, but it seems to be a beautiful 70-something degree day from what I've understood. So here we go. Let's just start. If you have any questions or comments, please put them in the little box. There's some really important information that I think all of you really need to learn about the kangaroo industry and the treatment of the animals. We over here on this side of the world just think they're adorable. Some people don't feel that way, and that's not a good thing. So here we go. Hey, how are you?
Hi, good morning, good afternoon over there, good evening. Hope you're having a beautiful day, summer's day.
Thanks for having us.
Oh, you're welcome. It's a little bit of everything. If someone's watching from California, it's afternoon. If it's on the East Coast, it's evening. If it's Australia, it's morning, and everywhere in between. So it's actually pretty cool. So I'm really glad that you're here. And what I love to do is throw it right back at you to share who you are, how this started, how we have a cute kangaroo with us. So yes, I want to hear everything that you want to share, and I'm sure everybody else does too.
Right, so I'm Kate and Mick. We've been working together for 25 years making films, which has been a fantastic journey. Our main interest is to make films that are socially conscious and just interesting things that are going on with some fabulous people and animals around the world. So Kangaroo, the movie, is what we're focusing on today, and that's a movie that came out in 2018. And it has been a huge movie for all sorts of reasons, which will unfold during this hour. But we're very proud of it. It was a really interesting start to this movie. We sort of knew that kangaroos had like lots of different relationships with people around Australia. And we thought, wow, the whole world loves kangaroos and the whole world wants to come to Australia and see kangaroos. Why don't we unpack this Australian story about our national icon? And that's what we did.
And we were surprised that a film like this hadn't been made before. I mean, it was sort of, we've got natural history films about kangaroos, but we wanted to tell the story about the icon, about the cultural significance of the kangaroo. And we've been lucky enough to travel the world, and we understand that it's not just our icon as well. It's an international icon, and everyone loves the kangaroo. So we thought. And so we set about to tell that story, and so that's where the inspiration came from.
Oh, that's awesome. And what about the two of you? So what's your personal backgrounds? Like, tell us more about you as opposed to just talking about the film.
So I had a theatre background, so that was and when I met Mick, he was a filmmaker. So I jumped over from theatre to film. And so we set up our company in 1997. And we're very passionate about filmmaking and making a difference, really. That's by letting people know what's going on. We love to document what's going on. And share that with people. I mean, it's a tough, probably a tough career choice in some ways, financially, and like it's very loose in lots of ways. I don't know, it's fabulous, but I'm not sure I would recommend it. But no, it's been an amazing journey. And so we've been working together all that time and made about 5 feature documentaries, which is our passion, to really tell a big story. I mean, I think with investigative journalism, telling documentaries, it's a huge journey. It took us about 6 years to make Kangaroo, and we interviewed all sorts of people, like from the farmers and the landowners, the indigenous people, the who else? Scientists,
Government,
activists, people in the city, people like just so many different sorts of people, chefs, and we just felt it's a really interesting. Well, in our careers too, really interesting to kind of unfold public discourse in documentary, and that's the sort of documentaries we enjoy making.
I mean, for me, I've always, ever since I was a boy, wanted to make films. So for me, it was a bit of a no-brainer. But then I realised after working on, I spent a decade working on feature films and TV series, but then I realised my passion was to tell my own stories, and then I realised that I wanted to tell them through documentaries, and I realised, and when I met Kate and we set up our company, it felt like we knew that if we told stories about inspiring people that we found inspiring, then our audiences would find it inspiring. So that's where our stories have mainly came from, and so that's the motivation for us to make films. And and as Kate said, Kangaroo was no exception. Unpacking the story of the kangaroo was inspiring. It was also very shocking, and I'm sure we'll get to talk about that.
Yeah, I definitely want you to share some of the things that you've already shared with me already when we spoke last time, which the precursor to this, my previous lives, have kind of hinted at. I've let people know about Nike. I also said, like, if when we do a viewing of the film, a screening, that we have to get people's signatures to get things to stop that are happening, that nobody over here knows really what's going on. We really just see this as this, I want to go pet a kangaroo, and how cute. We have one marsupial in the United States, and it's an opossum, and I don't even think people really understand that. They just understand the kangaroo and the kid, and it's adorable, except when they kick. There's like some things that you think about, like when the kangaroo. I mean, but I'm gonna say, like, let's dive into. I don't know which to start with. Start with like the shocking things you learned, and then head to the positive, or end with the shocking. Start with the positive.
We'll introduce the kangaroo a bit more.
Yeah, so. and also the way, I think our journey is interesting too, because when we go into a community, we're relying on people's goodwill to talk to us. That's what documentary makers do, and that's a whole nother conversation how that works, because it is fascinating that we rely on people's goodwill to talk to us. And usually communities, like majority of the time, communities are really welcoming and let us talk to them or want to share their stories, and that includes when you travel, when you go into towns and stuff. But what happened really early on in this production is that we would go into some country towns in Australia to interview people, and normally you get a warm reception and people. But for this film, when they found out what we were making it on, there was a real anger associated with the kangaroo, and that was very early on in our experience. And so when we were exposed to people's hatred of the kangaroo in the country towns, we were like shocked, obviously, because we hadn't experienced that before. But then we wanted to unpack that and unpack why there was such strong feelings about the kangaroo. I mean, and remember, we had to come back and research where we think that came from and where it started. Where did that sort of hatred for the kangaroo start,
So one of the things that I just wanted to just introduce the kangaroo a bit more. We have got a stuffy here for you guys. But So yeah, marsupials have babies and they're born really tiny and they crawl up the front here and sit inside the pouch and then they grow. This is called a joey. And in Australia, there's up to about 70 different sorts of kangaroos, like different species. So this is just, I don't know what that one's supposed to be. But so there's four species that are killed most often in Australia. And we were like, what, these are really cute. They're just the most beautiful animals to see in the wild. And we did get that amazing experience, which we can talk more about later, of seeing them in the wild. It's very sort of like African savanna, of just seeing great herds of, or mobs, as we call kangaroos in Australia for the group, mobs of kangaroos on the landscape. So that is a real treat. But we were intrigued by a sort of general hate or sort of callousness towards them. And we really found that it went back right to colonial times when white people first came to this country. I think it was a shock to come, from Europe to Australia. It's a very different continent. And what people went about quite quickly doing was trying to recreate England where they came from, and which is, fair enough in that shocking circumstance. One of those things was to plant their own crops and try and garden the way they had gardened, and also to remove wildlife that they felt was inconvenient or disturbing of that landscape that they wanted to, set up around them. So from really early on, and we found cases, right from early settlement, kangaroo shooting had became a thing to remove wildlife from the landscape they were trying to control for their own crops. And so right from the start, there has been this idea that kangaroos
are a problem.
Are a problem on
to be dealt with
on a sort of set up landscape where you're trying to grow your own ideas and introduce your own stock and things to the landscape.
They've never, we found out that it's never really been in the discussion that how we could possibly coexist with them. It's never been a broad discussion in this country that, perhaps we can coexist with them. And luckily there is work being done now to prove that that is possible. But generally the discussion throughout white settlement over the last 250 years has been that the kangaroos are a problem to be dealt with, not something that we need to work out how, if we want them on the landscape, how do we work to live with them on that landscape. So that's what we uncovered, and as you know, that is counter to what the image is portrayed, what people internationally think of them. So and so that cultural indifference in the bush has led to them being classified as a pest, as vermin, and that word alone obviously conjures up all sorts of issues and all sorts of animal welfare problems, because as one of our esteemed scientists in the film says, once you label something a pest, you can basically do what you like with them. That seems to be the way. So, this magnificent international icon has somehow ended up being called vermin, and that then became a really interesting part of the story for us, because as Australians, we wanted to unpack that and figure out, oh my goodness, how did this happen and what do we do about it? As concerned Australians, we wanted to know what we could do about it.
It's remarkable to me that a kangaroo is on the same level in Australia as a cockroach or a rat is perceived of here. I mean, I also I equate this to, we want to take the animals and we only want to use the ones that make sense for the way we live. It's very speciesist, right? It's speciesism to a T. And you come to a different land and you want everything to be the way you had it, but it's a different land. It's a different climate. There's different animals. I mean, you've got some doozies over there with the spiders and the snakes that we've all heard about. But the kangaroos, no, we've never thought of them as, I would think people here would be really upset to learn that. It would be like someone coming here and settling and saying dogs are pests, right? We're just gonna have to get rid of all these dogs, and people would be in an uproar. What do you mean we're gonna get rid of the dogs? Look how the cute dogs. They're all different sized dogs. There's like many different breeds of dogs. We're gonna get rid of all the dogs because now they're vermin. What does the kangaroo do in where they live that even made people feel they can't coexist with them?
Well, they do. When you take over kangaroo habitat to farm, which is basically what happens, the kangaroos have evolved over millions of years, long before humans. So basically, when you take over kangaroo habitat, the kangaroos want to hang around. So whether it be farming or urban development, the kangaroos are still there. So then apparently they're a problem. Then apparently they're competing. They're so-called competing for livestock food, or they're eating crops. And we've got 30 years now of peer-reviewed science that says that's all bunkum, that they don't compete for food or that cause a problem with the crops. And the only time that ever happens is during extreme drought. And Australia unfortunately does have extreme drought. So then it is something to be discussed, and it is something to be sort of planned on what do we do then. But most of the time, no, the science shows that kangaroos can coexist with livestock and with crops. And if there is an issue, then what we've learned on making the film is that there needs to be mature discussions about what to do about the issue, because we understand that wildlife are out there, and if it is an issue with farmers and it is an issue with land management, then have a mature discussion about it. Don't just label them a pest and go and shoot the crap out of them, excuse the French, because that's basically what happens here.
We found, surprisingly, I just want to pitch in for the kangaroo, that the kangaroo is one of the 3 top things people want to see in Australia. 70% of people who come here want a wildlife experience. And, tourism was one of our top 3 industries prior to the COVID, but obviously, hopefully we'll return all to that. But so to have the kangaroos on the one hand treated so badly, and on the other hand so valuable, we found that a very unusual. While we were making a film, like don't the hands talk to each other? They're one of our most precious, unique national icons that everyone loves and wants to see. Yet we haven't quite bothered, I have to say, to work out how to coexist with them in a way that benefits both. We haven't really let ourselves establish the idea that we share this continent with wildlife, and how best can we manage that? Things do happen slowly. Like obviously with large kangaroos on the road, that's an issue because we put roads right through their landscape, and that becomes an issue. Slowly there people are developing fences that scare off kangaroos to let them know that there's something coming up. But if there's a drought, there's more kangaroos that come to the side of the road. We have to keep adapting our kind of invasive style into what was for 50,000 years was an incredibly functioning landscape. So it's interesting. In some ways, you just have to let that story of the colonial arrival of white people into Australia as it is. You have to leave it as it is. But really now, I think
adapt.
In 2021, it's surprising that we're not adapting faster and with more intelligence to a way ahead, where the kangaroo is a real key part of this landscape and a key part of our wealth as a tourism destination.
Yeah, I like your point about the governments, why they don't talk to each other. If I was head of Tourism Australia, I'd be, and given that we're going to get to the activist part of this story in regards to what we can do to help save the kangaroo. If I was head of Tourist Australia, I'd be saying to the agricultural people, we need to work this out, because this has the potential to really hurt us as from a tourist perspective. And as Kate said, Tourism Australia's own research has shown that the kangaroo is in the top 3 things that people want to see. If that's true, and that's a $40 billion industry every year. I know that's, as Kate said, pre-COVID.
62, actually.
62,
well,
there
it was
go.
last time.
Yeah. Right. So I'm surprised that they don't talk to each other, because we're going to start talking about what is going on around the world in regards to what people can do, because we haven't even begun to unpack what is happening to the kangaroo at the moment. And yeah, your viewers are going to be really shocked when we start talking about that.
Are there any other animals in Australia that your people are doing this to, or is it the kangaroo is isolated?
I think the treatment of wildlife here is not great. We're one of the first, is that what you say, country we have the worst mammal extinction rate here, and we have a fantastic array of animals in Australia, as you said, and lots of kind of. There's a fantasy around the world of what it's like here. Of course, in the city, it's not quite so, but there is an amazing group of animals here. And I think a lot of other wildlife do get really mistreated in the same way for the same reasons, for habitat loss, for agricultural industry wanting to remove them from landscapes. In fact, they put up fences and try and get rid of all the wildlife within the fences, exclusion fencing, they call it. So yes, it does. So
unfortunately,
wildlife.
Unfortunately, to answer your question, no, kangaroos are not the only ones. So look, shame Australia, because the koala, it's going on with the koalas, it's going on with the wombats. No, shame. It is a shame, and as an Australian, I'm ashamed by the way we treat our wildlife. We had to make a conscious choice to focus on the kangaroo because that was the story we wanted to tell. But yeah, we could have easily gone off on other tangents with the koalas and the wombats. So no, unfortunately, our track record is atrocious, and that is another reason why it's pretty bloody obvious that, as Kate says, we have to adapt in this 21st century because we're going to lose our wildlife. And we're in a unique position here in Australia that we still have wildlife. That's the point, isn't it? I mean, when you look at Europe and you look at North America, and you have some wildlife, but not to the extent that we do. And surely we're up for this challenge. But right now, it's not looking good.
One of the pressures on kangaroo is that they have started a commercial kangaroo industry where they're selling kangaroo body parts, both internationally and here in Australia, for things like pet food and soccer cleats and handbags and all sorts of different things.
So it started out as a management thing. So it started out as we were helping the farmers by culling. There's that horrible word cull. It really just is an excuse to kill. And they still use that term. So it started out as a management thing to cull, didn't it? And from that, they started to make money from it. And now it's not even a management issue. It's just go out and get them for commercial gain, like a fisheries, really, isn't it?
Yeah. So once you put that pressure, the commercial pressure, again onto a wildlife, we've never really managed that anywhere around the world.
Nowhere.
It doesn't work to. We've had fires and floods and droughts. I mean, really, in the last couple of years, we've been hit quite hard in Australia with natural disasters, and we still have to fulfill commercial kangaroo interests. So you still have to kill this many to sell, to keep it going. It's not like one person going out on a good day, like sort of to get one or something. This is like a commercial industry where thousands are packed every night into chillers, like fridges out in the bush to send off overseas and to America as well. And that, of course, puts enormous pressure on wildlife stocks. Not only are you taking all sorts of different like males and females from the actual family groups that they live in, but you're also just taking numbers. And
we were surprised. Most people, I reckon. What do you think? Most people in America and Europe thought they were farmed.
Oh yeah, 90% of people
we were shocked. So people thought the kangaroos were farmed when we started talking about commercial killing, and so we had to adjust that thinking. No, they can't be farmed. they're a wild animal that has a muscular myopathy, which means that they basically die if they're herded. So no, they can't be farmed, and so as a result, as we've just said, the commercial pressure on them is extraordinary. And as we've also said, wildlife always lose when there's commercial pressure.
Do the
Yeah, David, it
majority of
is horrible.
people do the majority of people in Australia support or not support this?
Well, it's interesting. I think, like you and lots of people in America, a lot of people don't know in Australia what's going on. You know, it happens that the unusual thing about killing kangaroos is it happens at night. And it happens mostly quite far away from
Yeah, and there's a
major
reason for that
population.
because they're most active at night. So, but it's very convenient as well.
Yeah. So a lot of people don't know, but what we found since the movie came out in 2018 and 3 years later is that as people start to find out around the country, most people we talk to do not want this to happen. They can't believe that it's not managed as a ecological, it's not managed with the kangaroos as the focus at all. It's managed with the agricultural industry as the focus. So really, what we found is that the wildlife, although protected sort of in legislation, actually there's so many caveats to that the poor old kangaroo just doesn't stand a chance with, road development, urban development, forest fires, droughts,
But the main thing is the commercial,
mitigation,
but
and then the intensive commercial industry that goes on.
So, let's cut to the chase. Nike, Adidas, Purina, these are some big brands in North America that are bashing baby joeys every night to supply their chain, right? So let's just cut to the chase.
So
that is what the commercial kangaroo industry has to deal with the baby joeys that are left in the mother's pouch when the kangaroos are shot. And what happens is when the joeys are old enough to get out of the pouch, they are then, and they use the word dispatched. And I don't need to go into detail about, what they do, but the reality is these little tiny baby joeys, not much, about the same size as these guys in the pouch, I'm saying physically about the same size as what I'm holding, are dispatched every night. And what's worse is that the Australian government cannot tell us how many baby joeys are killed for the commercial kangaroo industry because they don't record the numbers of the baby joeys that are killed. So we estimate it's in the hundreds of thousands of baby joeys every year are bashed to death to supply companies in North America and around the world with kangaroo products. And that's shocking, and that is something that we don't think is okay in the 21st century. And no matter what the government tells us, that is a reality because they cannot tell us how many baby joeys are killed in the name of supplying the products overseas.
And what's even worse, can it get worse, is we over here, when we buy the Adidas, the Nike, the Purina products, it's not labeled. Like, we don't know, right?
Mm.
Well, in some cases that's true. I mean, some of the brands will, like I know Nike and Adidas, they often call it K leather. They rename it. I'm not sure about the pet food companies, but really it's not something that's talked about, but that's changing because we're very proud of the impact of the film. The film has created a number of campaigns to stop this. When the film was released in cinemas in Europe, we were invited by the EU Parliament to screen the film in Brussels, and which we did, and the reaction was immediate. There were a number of members of the European Parliament that quite rightly were shocked at what we uncovered, and from that, a campaign is now being run inside the EU Parliament to ban the import of kangaroos into Europe, and that will be based very similar on the way they banned the import of baby harp seal skins into Europe. And yeah, we look forward to seeing what happens there. But also, interestingly enough, some big NGOs in Europe got involved in the campaign once they found out what had happened, and that had an immediate impact too.
So companies like Prada and Gucci, Diodora, Versace, they've made a commitment to stop using all kangaroo body parts for their products.
I mean, once those fashion brands found out about the baby joeys, it was a bit of a no-brainer, wasn't it?
Well, I think that once people actually know, of course they don't want to be part of it. It's not a sort of huge thing to acknowledge that we just don't want to see babies smashed, to make products. I think that's a fairly common international idea in every country that we've screened the film. That's a really normal response. So, I think the general gist of having kangaroo body parts around the world for sale is that people just don't know. And, that's until people know what's going on. I don't think people purposefully buy it with that in mind. They just think that it's okay, So, I have faith in people that they don't like that.
But it's an interesting situation for us. Our very own government is telling the American people, our own ambassador in Washington, D.C. is telling our people that, and telling your fellow North Americans and the EU ambassador in Brussels, they're telling everybody that this is all okay. So that's what we're up against at the moment. Our own government is telling people that this is all okay, that it's regulated, there's nothing to see here. And it's extraordinary that's why I think people think it's okay. When another government, particularly a friendly government like Australia, is saying that this is all okay, it's a regulated industry, it's all taken care by a code of practice, But if they can't look me in the face and tell me how many joeys are killed every year, then it's basically lies. I mean, they would say, oh, well, that's information we don't have. Well, don't tell the world that everything is okay. It's not. This is an industry that relies on killing baby joeys every night, and that's what we're up against when our own government tells us that. And it's
true.
Anyway, look, we're seeing the change, though. We're seeing the change in people's perception, and obviously governments follow the will of the people, and so that's what we're relying on here. And we, your listeners can help with this, and the fact that they're listening is a good start. And there's things that people can join to help us, stop this brutality, because that's what it is. I mean, it's just brutality.
This is not an easy thing to hear. I'm curious if your government kind of wants you to be quiet.
Well, I think when the film came out, people were shocked. We hadn't really unpacked that story before in public. It's been going on for decades, and no one's really talked about it before. But, we were just filming what was happening. Actually, while we were filming, whistleblowers came forward and told us what was happening, beside them or on their properties or on the property next to them. So we did start to tell a story that hadn't been told. So, of course, there was quite a bit of response from the industry and from the government to deny that what people have actually said in the film, which is not what we said, but what scientists have said or what their own government people had said. So, yeah, there was quite a bit of, they actually put out a huge dossier about the film to discredit things that had been said, which we then had to rewrite another dossier to say, actually, your people said this, or the scientists said this, or this is what the whistleblowers are saying. So I think if you did an investigation onto this, you would find it was true. So actually, there has been quite a lot of retaliation against the film. But the good thing about that is it's really put it on the agenda. And what we're pleased to report is that, in fact, this week, an inquiry into the management and well-being of kangaroos is being held in our state parliament. It's the first time in 25 years that we've stopped and looked at that. And I think the film has created a really strong case for that to happen and for people to really go, oh, hang on, maybe we're not in control. Maybe it's outdated. Our science is outdated. Our welfare issues are outdated. Maybe this is time to really stop. And so we're very pleased to be presenting on Friday in our local state government about this very issue and what's going on. So that's taken, quite a number of years since the film came out, but we're really pleased, and that feels like a really sensible and mature way to go about our next phase with the well-being of kangaroos in our state. So we're really looking forward to that and the outcomes of that committee and the recommendations of that committee as to how we want to go forward.
Gosh,
But
I
yeah,
hope that works.
I don't think the government, governments obviously don't like to be told that what they're doing is wrong, and
True.
but this is a bit of a no-brainer. I mean, this is, despite the spin that this is well managed and there's nothing to see here. That's what investigative filmmaking is all about. We have exposed the opposite, and we now have, as Kate said, there's a whole network of whistleblowers that are willing to prove it, and it's coming. So yeah, no, we're not. It's not something they want to hear, but too bad. There's a lot of Australians and a lot of people around the world that care enough for this magnificent icon to stop this brutality.
It's interesting dealing with wildlife. You talked before about the idea of killing dogs or something in America as something, but this is actually our wildlife that we're so lucky to share the continent with. Really, Indigenous people lived in this continent for 50,000 years and found it all right to live with all this wildlife. We want a new era where we really value the wildlife. I mean, when you're traveling for Europe, for example, you look out the plane window and there is just a lot of agriculture, horticulture, all going on. It's just like paddock, paddock, paddock. It's just, you can see the wildlife has got less and less and less. And, that's what happens as the population grows. But in Australia, we haven't got that. We've still got magnificent wildlife. So to actually really note that we're in a position in Australia to really value a unique, island continent. It's very unique, and it has the most, we're still finding things in Australia that we didn't know we had. It's unexplored in so many ways. There's so many ways we don't know what kangaroos, like what part they play in the ecosystem yet. There's still so much to uncover. And if we can pause and really look at the Australian continent as something so precious that scientists across the world can continue studying, to find out about our planet that we're, part of at the moment. I mean, I just feel like that's such a great way to go forward. The agricultural industry that takes up 40% of all available sort of land whereas the kangaroos are only really given 11% at the moment, and that's not even really theirs because they still get shifted out of that all the time. If we look at the balance we need to make between making money and living and going ahead with the enormous value of having a wild landscape still, surely with our intelligence and all the things we can do these days, we can work out great ways of coexisting. And what an exciting world that is to be able to do that and to learn from the animals that have really, they've evolved on this continent. A lot of things that they do are a part of our own evolving. We need to evolve with as well to really manage how to live in drought, how to live in flood, how to live in fire, how to manage that, how to not have such big forest fires because we do burn off more regularly, and all those things. There's so much to learn from our Indigenous people and the wildlife that we live here about how to live on this continent that we're kind of missing the point, I think.
It It for you, it's the kangaroos, and for like us here, cows, pigs, chickens. I mean, I equate this to just humans being dicks, and I mean, it's I just my saying is just don't be a dick. Really, the animals coexist with us. We are not above them. We are not below them. We all live here on this planet, and we have to do our best to make it so that we all can survive here. And we don't need to use them. We don't need to have them, especially now. We've evolved to the point where we don't have to have any animal products whatsoever in our daily lives at all to be perfectly happy and fine and have the things that people want to have and to coexist with the animals, stopping the building that we don't necessarily need, controlling our population so that we don't necessarily have to control their populations. Why do we get to like run rampant, going out and destroying the planet? I'm not saying like kill humans, but don't push the we have to procreate. Not everybody does, and that's okay. Because
I think
we don't
we're obsessed. We're obsessed with economic growth, but I don't think that they're mutually exclusive. What you're saying, excuse me, and I don't think protecting wildlife is mutually exclusive with economic growth either. And that's the thing. I think all right, if we have to talk that language, then let's talk that language. Because if we look at if we look at what Africa's done with their wildlife safaris, where they've learned to absolutely celebrate what's going on with their wildlife over there. I mean, Africa, I know that Africa has its issues, and I know that there's problems with still huge problems with hunting and stuff. But at least they have a government and poaching. But at least they have a government that understands the value of their wildlife and what that wildlife brings to the economy. I would, if you want to talk economic growth, let's have that discussion about what Australia could look like as a wildlife destination, and what does that look like, and is that something that we could look at as a use of land? Because if you want to know about climate change, you only have to study the continent of Australia. Our droughts are getting longer and more frequent. If you want to study climate change, study what's going on here, because there's no denying, all the science is in, our droughts are longer and more frequent. I even remember when I was a kid that, droughts came along, I don't know, once every 10, 15 years. Now you're getting them every, 2 or 3 years. So it's like, it's a major problem here. So we need to be having that discussion. What is the best use of our land? And perhaps, I'd like to see a future where we can have a use of landscape for wildlife. If tourism is one of the next, well, it already is. If it's going to continue to grow, I mean, the figures show that tourism is going to overtake parts of agriculture as far as income, GDP to this country. If that's true, let's start having that discussion about what wildlife tourism could do
Oops,
for
I
that.
can't hear you.
Do you want us to talk so you can hear?
1, 2,
Thank
3.
you. Okay, there we go. Thank you. Sorry, they disconnected for a second. I think everyone else probably could hear you though, so that's a good thing. Yeah, I'm sorry. It's incredibly important. I'm kind of curious as to how much money does this industry make?
Well, we don't know the figures because they've put figures out, but they're old and they're not actually seen. They produce their own figures, so I can't even guess what the figures are. They say they're in the sort of 100 to 150 million, but there's no one's seen that, and there's no saying that.
But it's a small.
Generally
that's a small
a few
industry.
people.
That's a small industry.
It's a small Australian industry, yeah, and it's and only a few people gaining really the wealth from that.
I'm so disappointed. I hate to say this. I kind of looked at Australia and your government as being better than this, right? Especially
Sorry about
after
that.
our last 4 years. So and I'm so disappointed. I this is one of those things where I think people will watch and go, what in the world can I do? And we're literally on the other side of the world. We're in summer, you're in winter. What can we do to help facilitate change and get this out of products that are being sold here and in Europe where Europe is doing something about it, which is fantastic. They're not going to
Well,
do
they
anything
are.
about this here.
Well,
Since the 1970s, actually, California has had an interest in this issue, and they stopped importing kangaroo body parts into California. Occasionally, that's been disrupted by legal issues, but pretty much since that time, California cannot sell kangaroo body parts.
which is fantastic.
So the precedent in America is actually already set up.
So California has the laws that stops Nike selling shoes in California made from kangaroos, stops Purina selling pet food made from kangaroos. So California is the benchmark for other states to follow. So there's and when we toured with the film in America, there was talk of other states following California's lead. So finding sympathetic, elected representatives in your state to model what California's already done. And at a national level, there's been a campaign since the release of the film launched in Congress. So there's actually a bill that's been put to Congress, which is fantastic. And that also is to ban the import of kangaroos products into America. So there's a couple of things.
And pet food. So shoes and pet food is two things that have already started. Kangaroos are not shoes, and
so there's a campaign website called kangaroosarenotshoes.org for people to participate in, and the other one is an online petition to stop Chewy, which is an online pet food distributor from distributing kangaroo meat. So there's two campaigns that North Americans can join straight away. But from a legislative change, we would love to see other progressive state legislators follow California's lead, because that's obviously been very effective. California is a huge market for soccer cleats and pet food.
Yeah, California is its own country in a sense. And what can happen is California can create these rules or laws, and the companies will just change it for every state, because the economy there is so massive that it's easier just to make all their products without the kangaroo than to make no products for California and then make them with for the rest of the country. That's one of the leading things about California and how progressive they are. And because they're such a big economy, I mean, they're literally the size of many countries in Europe and have the economy of countries. They could go off on their own, and I think some people in this country would prefer that, but they help us that are in these smaller states that are purple, as we call it, because there's a lot of red and a lot of blue, a lot of Democrats and Republicans in like North Carolina, making us purple. Our major cities are more Democratic, the more rural areas are more Republican. Our government is more Republican, even though we have a Democratic governor in this state. It makes for very interesting politics. They won't touch this, probably. They won't care. They don't care about the pigs being slaughtered on the east coast of North Carolina.
Well, it is a bit of a no-brainer, though. That's the interesting thing when we toured with the film. It is a bit of a no-brainer for North Americans and Europeans. It doesn't impact anybody there.
Right.
Does that make sense? It's like it's a no-brainer. Kangaroos, hello. It doesn't impact anyone in North America or Europe to stop this brutality. Back here in Australia, we understand it involves a lot more people and a lot more discussion with scientists and government, and we're up for that challenge. But over there, it's a no-brainer. You guys, it doesn't impact anybody to help stop this brutality. And whether it's your state legislator or whether it's consumers, every time they think about, buying shoes or handbags or whatever, they know that they could look. And as we know, consumer power is everything when it comes to these campaigns. And that's why we're really buoyant and confident about America and Europe, because it's just a no-brainer for you guys to stop doing this. And California has been the example. We're really hopeful in Europe that they'll do the same, and then we keep going until we can do something about this brutality.
I mean,
Yeah.
the commercial pressure on wildlife there's no good end to that. There's just no good end to commercially hunting wildlife. It can't be done. It can't be sustainable, and it can't go on. You sort of think, oh, people are just in it for the short term, because that's really the only time you're going to make cash, is in this sort of short term flurry of killing wildlife. You can't take out the big males. You can't take out the females. There's so many areas that haven't been scientifically looked at for this industry that are just wreaking havoc right now, for a short time. So it feels like I think even in Australia, both sides of politics can see that the animal welfare issues are out of hand with this. It's not just one side or the other. Everyone really has a soft spot for the kangaroo. Here in Australia too, we proudly have it on all our sports clothes, on all our teams,
Logos.
on all our logos, on all that we get.
It's on our national airline.
It's on our when you go to our
coat of arms.
Federal government. There's a huge kangaroo and emu at the top over the
flag,
over the sort of entrance into the building. We really do recognise that it's this wonderful creature that somehow represents us all over the world. Even if you can't speak English, you've heard of the kangaroo.
It's really a blind spot, isn't it?
Mm.
It's really a blind spot on our psyche.
I think it's a historical blind spot in lots of ways that we just haven't updated yet, and it's past time that we updated that.
Reboot.
Yeah.
It restart on our psyche.
Yeah.
Because it really is a blind spot, and it's a shame. It's a shameful blind spot, isn't it? Hey, look, we're very fortunate as filmmakers to get to go into these communities and meet extraordinary people, and Kangaroo's been no exception. And some of the whistleblowers that we've met on this film have just inspired us every single day, because they're the ones that have been confronting this brutality and bringing it to people's attention. And we were, very fortunate to be given some of their footage and of course their on-camera testimony. And as a result, Kate and I have been compelled to continue to help them, and we actually joined with some of the whistleblowers to set up a not-for-profit of ourselves called Kangaroos Alive, that people can visit, kangaroosalive.org. And we're filmmakers, we had no intention of doing that at the beginning, but it was something that we just felt compelled to do, didn't we? And it's been a proud journey for us to raise money for some of these brave people that are caring for kangaroos and wanting to continue to expose this brutality. And and the work of Kangaroos Alive continues, that people will see on our social media, continue to bring attention to these nightly occurrences of what's going on with kangaroos. So if people are compelled to help, that they know that if they support the work of Kangaroos Alive, they know that it'll be put to supporting these people that are on the front line helping kangaroos.
Well, thank you for doing that. I mean, I'm not surprised that more has come of this, because your hearts your hearts to do this film, but to what you've learned, the pain of what you've learned as you've created this. I can't imagine because I'm sitting here talking to you for an hour and it hurts my heart what's going on and what you've learned. And you've been immersed in this for 9 years now and just
Mm.
and doing everything you can to facilitate change in your own country and other countries, spreading the word, making sure people understand. And like you said, we haven't touched on koala bears, which, oh my goodness, I know that I've heard a little bit about. It's like don't touch the koala bears. We love your animals. We don't love your spiders and snakes, but we love your cute animals and wish that we had them here. But then we probably mess it up over here as well.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think that the one of the good things that has kept us going is the sort of braveness of the whistleblowers, but also the magnificence of the actual animals themselves. I mean, the thing about making a film is that, and the footage that you'll get to see on the movie is this beautiful animal in full flight. They can jump up to 40 miles an hour in speed. So they fly over these wildly bumpy landscapes that you can't believe they can manage so well. They've got soft padded feet, so they don't disturb the landscape, but they've got like quite big toenails, as you call them, nails on there. So they do, when they're moving, they do take seeds with them, and their toenails do actually create holes in the earth for seeds as well. So, but the babies, the eyelashes, they're just so gentle, and to be in their company is just tremendous. They're a very gentle herbivore. They're incredibly nurturing of their young. They stay
very complex social structure.
They stay in their mobs and they hold family information in that structure. So even if you have 2 or 3 different families on your property, they'll be doing different things. They look after one another. The mothers will come and look after orphaned joeys. I mean, it's a very beautiful, unique landscape that we do well to watch more from. And friends on the front line who get to spend their lives with kangaroos, it's just such a privilege to go and be in their company. And I know that everyone who's seen a rescued joey, they're the cutest little animals. They're born with these long, sort of wildly wobbly legs that they learn to walk on. Watching them climb back into their mother's pouch is just the cutest thing. It's seemingly way too long because they can stay in their mother's pouch till they're about 18 months. So these 18-month joeys seem far too big to climb back in, but really it's just an honor to be in their company, and it's one of life's magnificent things to do. And if you haven't done it yet, you've got such a big thing to look forward to. And we hope you can come to Australia soon and see kangaroos in the wild and just enjoy their magnificence and be inspired by their lives to actually not want to take part in anything to do with their, killing and sales of their body parts.
That would be amazing to come over there. Again, once your borders are open, because they're not. We haven't even touched on the fact that COVID is still an issue and you haven't been allowed to leave. You finally were allowed to travel within Australia last time we spoke, which was earlier in the year, but not outside.
Yeah. We actually have a border open with New Zealand, so we can go to and from New Zealand at the moment, and which is fantastic, and it's lovely to be able to do that. But yeah, we're still vaccinating over here at the moment, and we haven't really made any plans to open the borders yet. Yeah.
Is that? I mean, it's a good and bad thing. I mean, like you said, it's been 18 months, and you're watching what we do over here to see what happens, which is really smart because we're just going to do pretty much what we want over here, and maybe follow science. But like Israel, like we talked before we went live, Israel is doing, is a good example of vaccinating the people, and it's been months and not having a recurrence of COVID, an explosion of it, which, we'll know more when it hits fall, when it's less hot here, whether there's really an issue, because the heat does help, the humidity does help with it not spreading. So hopefully we'll have a better handle on things by the fall, and it won't be an issue, and you all get vaccinated and your borders open, because the airfare to Australia might be really good once you open your borders. It might be the one time where we can really do it. And
Yeah.
that would be absolutely amazing.
There's a it needs updating on kangaroosalive.org. There's a thing called the Kangaroo Trail, and it's terribly out of date, and we apologise, but we haven't had a chance to work with the wonderful people who created it. But it's a great place for people to start, because we'd love you guys to come out and explore how you see kangaroos, because it is truly, as Kate said, one of life's great wonders. And we've travelled to Africa and seen the wildlife there, and we've been on whale watches, and some of the great experiences. I can guarantee that seeing kangaroos in the wild is equal to that. They are magnificent animals, and you can tell we're compelled to tell their story and compelled to make sure that we keep them on this landscape. So we look forward to welcoming people, to come and see them.
Yeah, there you go. Life goals. It should be everyone's life goal. I mean, go to a safari, go to Australia, see the animals where they live, not in the zoo where they're captive, but in their natural habitat where they are free and living their lives just like we are. We just happen for that moment in time to get to kind of peek in safely, without disturbing them, without messing them up. Just like just be decent people, and just observe, because that's okay. Because they're kind of watching us at the same time. Like, don't come over here.
Very observant of when you've entered their landscape, and they know very well. They keep a certain distance away from you, and they watch what you're doing way before you've even seen them. So they know what's going on before when you've arrived. But it's look, anytime, we'd love to welcome you all, and come and see our beautiful country.
And in the meantime, if you haven't seen Kangaroo the movie yet, please do.
If you go to our website, kangaroothemovie.com, there's a whole lot of different options. In America, it's on Amazon. So in North America, so you can see it if you're an Amazon subscriber.
Or iTunes.
Or iTunes.
Google Play.
Or Truly.
Google Play.
Yeah.
So please, because it does, we think it'll do a way better job telling the story than we can, because it's other people's stories in there. So please check it out, kangaroothemovie.com, and please stay in touch with us. Where you can tell we love hearing from people, and communicating on how they can help, protect and stop this brutality. It's got to stop, and we're pretty confident that it can.
I feel like it has to happen, so we'll work on making that happen, because you have my full support as well. Thank you so much, Kate and Mick. Thank you so much for sharing all about this, and I hope everyone who's watched feels as horrified as I felt about what's going on in Australia. And I know David commented, "Oh my God, that is horrible," when you were talking about it. And if people need to know, awareness is key. And when we need to take our heads out of the sand on certain issues and do something about them, because this is definitely, like you said, kangaroos, Australia, they're synonymous around the world. Let's do better. Australia, you need to do better. Your government needs to do better. And all the people that are involved in this need to do better. We need to just cancel this. The cancel culture, it's awesome. We just need to, we don't need it. We don't need leather. We certainly don't need kangaroo meat or animal parts in any of our anything, anywhere in the world. We just don't need it. So thank you for joining me and starting your Monday with me. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Oh,
thank you for having us.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you. Have a great day, and I'll definitely speak to you soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Well, everyone, thank you once again for watching Virtual Vegfest Live, and we are back on Thursday with Michelle and Dr. Brecky, and that'll be at 5:15 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And then that would be it for next week because we're on the road, and that will be from Asheville as well. In the interim, we will be in Chattanooga and Knoxville, Tennessee. So remember to be kind to one another, support your local restaurants, mask up just to be safe where you feel inside, where you feel comfortable, where you don't feel comfortable. Like we said, we're on the road and we have been masking inside, we have been not masking outside. And it's been absolutely wonderful to be traveling and to be enjoying incredible vegan food in these cities and states that we are in. And Rosetta's Kitchen is on tap for after this. So we will see you on Thursday. Thanks again for watching. Subscribe to Virtual Vegfest YouTube. Follow us on social media and go to virtualvegfest.com to support our vendors and to enter a contest. Bye, everyone.